Hello, everybody. I want to have a mystical conversation with you today, the kind where we lose ourselves in the wonders of divine mysteries, share dreams from the other side, intuitive nudgings, and soul mission yearnings. This is what happens when we lift above our ego minds and review life from that place of divine inspiration. And who doesn't want to go to divine inspiration? I mean, really, we focus on this earthly realm all day long, and it's just kind of a crazy place. So we each need to rise up and have a more mystical viewpoint at least once a day. So we hope that today and this moment will be your moment of rising up to the mystical. I'm Sue Frederick, and I'm your host for this mystical conversation. I'm the author of 8 books, including Through a Divine Lens, Bridges to Heaven, I See Your Dream Job. I'm a lifelong intuitive, a master numerologist, an ordained unity minister, and a soul regression therapist. Don't worry about it, people. I'm old. I've had a lot of time to put on all those titles. I've helped thousands of clients help find their way through this dense realm that we call life. And if you want to know more about my work, my website is SueFrederick.com. But I am so excited to just introduce you to this amazing soul. I met her. Her name is Lavonne Wells, and I'm going to read her bio, and then I'll tell you how I met her. She is a spiritual teacher, a global speaker, and a love activist. She offers grief support to moms who have experienced the passing, transitioning of a child. As the spiritual teacher, Lavonne has made it her life's work to provide support for mothers to create peace while processing grief. I love that. She can connect to spirit while providing compassionate understanding and insightful shares during a time of need. She provides workshops, private and group sessions. She offers a work called Connections and Communications, which is about connecting to our departed. She offers a Saturday support for moms, which is so cool. You can learn all about this work on her website, LavonneWells.com. So say hello, Lavonne. I'm so happy to have you here.
Hello, happy to be here.
You know, the way we met is both of us were speakers at the amazing Helping Parents Heal conference in August, and we'd never met each other before. We never knew who each other was, but there was this huge corridor that you had to walk through every morning to get from the rooms, the hotel rooms, to the conference area. Every single time I went down that corridor, there was this gorgeous woman with her soul glowing in the corridor, like this light just emanating from her. And I would stop, even if I was like hurrying on my way to go do something or teach or meet somebody, I would just stop and go, "Who are you?" And you would do the same to me, right,
Yeah.
Lavonne?
Yeah.
It was our souls like recognizing each other and just saying, I see your soul's beauty, and I hope that I think we remember each other, and I hope we get time to reconnect.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
So, Lavonne, tell everyone your story with your daughter Kiva is so extraordinary, and it's also very painful. But I know you've had some time to process it. But I think anybody listening could benefit from hearing about your journey.
Yeah. With Kiva, she came early and we didn't know that she was going to have all these medical conditions. She had McCune-Albright syndrome, which was a rare at that time she was born October 13th, 1999, but they didn't know much about it, especially at the hospital. And it just so happened a doctor walked past her bed and noticed her and just saw that she had these cafe au latte pigmentations on her body. And those are markers indication of McCune-Albright syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And so he connected with the Institute of Health out of Maryland, and they did some consultations and I can't even, sorry.
Okay.
Are you editing?
No.
Oh dear. That's okay. Because here's the deal. Where did you all go when I went there?
That's
Uh,
right.
you know,
And here's the other part of
it's a
not
great
editing.
practice of being present.
Yeah, and it catches our raw emotions. It's okay for even after all these years, when we tell
Yeah,
that story, there's a pain trigger in it, and that's okay
yeah,
to acknowledge
yeah.
that. So
Yeah,
if
our DNA
suddenly
has
your
memory.
yeah,
Yeah,
and suddenly if your
definitely.
voice gets a little, cracked up a little bit, that's perfect. And meanwhile, I have a Bengal cat who's driving me crazy over here, and we're not going to edit that out either.
Well, I'm just grateful everybody on here loves us enough
That's
to
right.
stay with us. So the good news is National Institute of Health took over her care, and they were able to diagnose her with McCune-Albright syndrome. And so during this whole process, I was just that person. I believe she's going to be healed. And they were telling me, oh, the odds are not very good. And there came a point in time where we were in and out of the hospital so many different times. And basically, her whole endocrine system wasn't performing its proper function. I mean, she had hypothyroidism. She had heart problem, enlarged heart. I mean, there was just a lot going on with her lungs and just a lot of different things, adrenal failure. And all this time she was 5 pounds. And when she did transition, she was only 7 pounds. And so that lets you know a little bit about what that condition did to her. And I just remember going into the hospital a lot of different times, and I would see all these huge personages behind all the other children in the ICU unit. And I just thought, oh, maybe I'm out of touch reality. And literally I
What
was,
did
because
they look like?
it was just like these shadows,
Mm.
but I knew that they were like ancestors and angels, and I knew that they knew the child, if that makes sense, because they were uh, rocking the child, and you could see the children rocking back and forth, or you could see the children just sleeping peacefully. And I just felt like those were, maybe even their guardian angels, but they were guarding them. They were watching over them and taking care of them. And I was at the hospital till 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning. So most likely, you can see a lot more after the midnight hour, right?
Yeah, the veil is thinner.
Absolutely. And what was going on is I was going to see her, and then I was leaving, and I would have these experiences. And then I began to realize what was going on, because Kiva was in the process of transitioning. Even though she was on life support, I was in between both worlds. And so I had one foot in one and one in the other, because, a mother's heart goes with the child. And yet I'm still having to take care of the family and the other children at home. And so two different places.
It's kind of like you had a 5-month long shared death experience.
Yes, very much so. And that would explain why, they have me speak at the IANS, for the near-death experiencers as well. I just did that this year, and very shared near-death experience. And I remember one night going home, just tired, exhausted. How much longer? I wanted to be healed. It's not looking like it's the healing's going to take place in physicality. And I go home and I sit myself on my bed and gently lay my head down. And all of a sudden, I wasn't asleep. And I always recall it this way because I barely put my head down on the pillow. And all of a sudden, my room just lit up. And I heard all these little voices, and it was just like little whispers. And then they began to speak, but they spoke in one voice, and there were many. And they simply said to me, we know that you believe that she's going to be healed. We also know that you want her here with you, but we want you to know that she is going to leave, and that she has stayed as long as matter of fact, stayed longer than what she was supposed to. But now that she's here, she wants to stay with you. And this is what happens with a mother, and with anyone, but for me specifically, a mother and a child. Their hearts lock, and it's very difficult for either one to let go. And so, but we want you to know that she is going to leave, and that she came here and did what it is that she was to do. And we want you to know that it's okay. And I just remember feeling so much gratitude
Yeah.
because I was just holding on so tightly and knowing that I had to be her spokesperson. I had to be the one to make her whole or something, or do something to make her well. And then in that moment, I realized that someone somewhere loved me enough and cared enough about me in this moment to come and let me know it's okay to let go. It's okay. And it's crazy because I remember going into the hospital the next day and having a doctor pull me aside and simply say, what do you want us to do? There's nothing else we can do. It's my week. What would you like me to do? And I was prepared. And I said, take her off life support, and I just want to hold her. And so we were able to meet with the ethics board for the second time. And I was really surprised that the doctor was there and the nurses were there that have cared for her. And they thought it would be the most humane thing to do. And they said, we have this happen all the time where parents want to release and let go of their children off the life support and let them pass peacefully. And it's for many different reasons. But with this mom, she knows her daughter, because of course I've been in there day in and day out. And at the time I was practicing Reiki and I was working on my child, and the nurses were telling the other parents what I was doing. And I would have the parents pull me aside and say, hey, can you do that for my
So they
child?
were already recognizing you as a healer and a spiritual teacher,
Yeah,
even when
yeah.
you were in the midst of your most painful moments of grief and awakening. That's so beautiful.
It brought me so much joy to be able to meet these parents and love on their kids and love on them. And I was somewhat on a spiritual path, well, pretty much my entire life.
So I think I've heard that you have, just like me, studied every religion out there that you could find. I so loved learning that about you,
Yeah.
right? Because we both studied Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, all of these things. And I agree with you because I know you say that every path is about God and about love. And that if we just remember it's all about love, then we know that every path has that element of truth in it. That is so beautiful.
And I tell people to be mindful of the source of their own understanding. My source of understanding may not be yours. Your source of understanding may be just this divine love that is radiant and readily available within you and all around you, outside and all around you. It may be God, it may be Mother Mary, maybe Buddha, your source of your understanding, because it really anchoring into that in the most beautiful ways can be the most healing and supportive way as we're walking through this process called grief and the passing of loved ones.
Totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to share with the listeners part of the story of the beautiful Kiva is that she in this lifetime is and was a Libra 33 master soul. And any of my numerology peeps know that that's the highest frequency path that a soul can come in. It's believed that Jesus Christ was on the 33. And so many of the moms I work with lost children who were such highly evolved souls like Kiva, who didn't ever intend to stay long. In Kiva's short life, she completely put you on your path as a spiritual teacher. She woke up so many people around her. Well done, Kiva, you 33.
And she still does.
And she still does.
She still does. Yeah. And so, her passing was at the time we were practicing Buddhist at the time. And Rinpoche, who lives here in Utah, has studied Tibetan Buddhism for 30 plus years and study out of Tibet. He came in and created an altar, and we got the okay to take her off life support. And I just held her for an hour, and he sat beside me and literally just offered up prayers on her behalf to assist her in her transitioning process. And, it felt like 5 minutes, but it was an hour. And she took 3 deep cleansing breaths. And then I felt her immediately leave from the crown of her head and stand at my right side. And I remember him looking at me because it was challenging even his belief system. And he would always say that was the most powerful experience and the most beautiful soul. And I remember him ringing the Tibetan bell back and forth when she took that last breath. And it was just so ceremonial. And it was bittersweet. It was my baby, you know, and but it was more sweet than it was bitter because I knew she was standing right beside me. And people would say, well, how did she stand beside you when she was a baby? I'm telling you, these souls.
Yeah, the soul is ageless,
Yeah,
so when parents lose a young child or a baby, they worry like, will my baby be okay?
yeah,
And I'm always reminding them, as I know you are too, saying that baby is an ancient soul,
yeah.
that baby is our teacher. They are not, once they leave that physical form, they return to their full essence as a divine being, ageless and eternal.
Yes, absolutely. And I placed her temple body, her physical body back in the bed, and I'm walking out, and I hear this whisper, "Wait for me, I'm coming with you." And that's Kiva, I mean, an audible sound.
Yes.
And going to the elevator, and there was a friend walking with me, and I got on the elevator, and I just put my head down and said, if I say this to her, she might think I'm up in the night. And she looked at me and said, did you hear that? So she had heard the same thing.
That's
And
beautiful.
it was just the most beautiful experience. And since then, she has shown up as color. She has shown up as the child. She has shown up now in 2022 because she transitioned, passed on March 17th, St. Patty's Day, which happens to be one of my favorite holidays because I'm from Boston, born and raised, and we actually in our ancestry we have Irish, the Coleman side of the family, and I really didn't put two and two together that it was St. Patrick's Day, my favorite holiday, until later that she chose to pass. And in 2022, when she shows up now, she's in her young 20s, and that would be her age.
That's
I
so
know
great.
that, that's me saying, hey, it's your birthday. And she's like, hey, and I'm in my 20s. So it's a beautiful experience.
So I have two questions. One is, that happened how many years ago? Did Kiva
Oh,
cross?
she crossed, it's been, what is it, 21, 22, 21? She passed in 2000.
So what would you say to a mom today who's in the fresh, raw grief stage, who's listening to you and going, oh my gosh, I could never do that. I'm not going to survive this, because you and I know that grief cripples us,
Mhm.
So knowing that we've got one foot in the physical and one foot in the divine, how did you navigate that time being aware of both parts of yourself?
I had a really good support system, honestly. I had great friends that would go there with me. And when I would step out and be outside of myself, they were able to guide me back. And I know that not everyone has that, but I'm telling you, breath is queen. And one of the things that Kiva taught me, maybe 10 years into it, and she said, tell the mothers and anyone that has experienced the passing of a loved one, tell them to breathe because it gives you clear thought. It oxygenates the cells. It supports people in taking that pause, because what most people are doing is they're running around and avoiding the grieving process. And one of the things I said is, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And everyone that I've worked with, I've seen, I've sat with, my friends, acquaintances, the first thing out of their mouth is, I can't breathe. So I tell people to consciously take those breaths when you are able to be aware of your breathing, so that your body naturally and automatically connects to the breath when they feel like they can't, if that makes sense. So
That's something I love about the Eastern traditions. Both Buddhism and Hinduism have always honored the breath in that way.
yeah.
I mean, I lived in a Hindu ashram for a while, and we did that nostril breathing, that
Oh
I get.
yes, I love
So
that.
powerful. I've taught that to some of my grieving clients, because when sometimes your grief triggers a panic attack. Like
Yes.
it certainly did that for me in my early years of grief where I'd be driving to some place and I'd have a panic attack and I'd have to pull over to the side of the road. And, back then it was 1980. So nobody even really knew what a panic attack was. I was kind of on my own with it. But I had studied yoga in my 20s and the 70s. And so I knew that you could do that nostril breathing. What is that called? Do you remember the name of that?
I do not remember the name of it.
So what you all do is just go and Google the Hindu breathing where you exhale out of one nostril completely while you've blocked.
Oh, I love that. Yes,
it's inhale,
it's
switch nostrils.
inhale,
Right. That's
and then
it.
it's the
Yes. And what that does is it
release.
forces you to focus on breath and it calms you down. It's like one of the
Yes.
most profound ways. And so people would think I was insane. They'd drive by and see this woman on the side of the road. I'd even
You're on the
get
side
out
of the
of
road,
the
come
car
up.
and I was doing this.
Yeah.
But grief
I love it. I love it. I love
grief
it.
triggers anxiety, grief triggers panic, grief triggers fear. And
A
as
lot.
divine beings, we have all the tools to navigate that, but we
Yeah.
also have to choose to try them, to use
Yeah.
them.
Well, as I was saying before, the tools that Kiva gave me was the BGLs. It's the breath, it's the grieving, and it's the living. And so we've got the breathing, and the grieving part of that is, she says, it's imperative that the mothers be in the emotion of the grief, because usually behind the grief, the child is sharing information with you. The child is giving you information. You're releasing maybe those things that you're holding on to that's creating the panic, the anxiety, whatever is going on as well. So just simply acknowledging the emotion, being in the emotion. You don't even have to attach a name or word to the emotion. And then being willing to offer yourself compassion in that experience, and offer yourself kindness in that experience. And then the L is living. And living may be, I can't get out of bed. So you're laying there, but opening your eyes, getting out of the bed, brushing your teeth, going back to bed. Excuse me, going back to bed.
And picking up
Living
a
can be
book.
as simple
Yeah.
or as big as you want it to be.
Yeah.
But come up for air.
Yeah.
Come up for that air. You have permission to come up for air, because a lot of what's going on right now, which is the biggest thing that I'm working on debunking, is that you have to grieve forever. I don't believe that.
Gosh.
I do not believe that, because I
I'm
can
so glad you brought that up, because again, that's my pet peeve too, and I'm sure you noticed this, but my great losses were decades ago. And I still have people say to me, and plus I do believe they're my greatest gifts, because I wouldn't have woken up without them. I wouldn't be doing the work I do. I wouldn't be who I am without those great spiritual gifts of awakening. Thank you to all my departed beloveds for those gifts. But people will say, oh, I'm so sorry you've had such tragedy in your life. I find that so demeaning. I in no way think my life is tragic, even though I lost a husband when I was 29 and on and on. I feel like my life has been gifted, and I'm sure you feel that way too.
Yeah, absolutely. I stopped people from saying, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If you ever look at any of my Facebook posts, the first thing, if I'm talking about Kiva or grief or anything, the first thing you see is note, leave the sorries off, because they do not encourage me. They do not inspire me. They do not help or advance me in any way whatsoever. And I think that's part of teaching people how to treat me or how to see me or my experience, because they get to be wherever they're at too. That's all they know. And most of the times when they say tragic and sorry, it's automatic, but they don't know that they're on automatic, or they sincerely believe that because of where they are in their own progression and their own
That's what it
experience in
is,
life. So I teach spiritual
Yes.
teaching.
And that's why you and I both, I believe, are holding the light of awareness and, in our different ways and our different work. is that we're going around bucking the system of traditional thinking about grief. And it's funny because I just became an ordained Unity minister, and I chose Unity because I've studied every tradition, and Unity says this is an all good, all God universe, no matter what name you put to it. And I can totally get behind that, right?
Yeah.
But I also know that in any kind of a religious path or system or structure, there are still limited beliefs about grief, and that it is a long-term suffering journey, and that we simply have to know that that loss will be with us forever. That is not true. Anyone who's listening,
it's not true.
What you learn,
it's not true.
grieving people who are listening to us, trust Lavonne when she tells you it is a moment of just learning a new way to be with your departed beloved.
And I I've been doing this masterclass with these moms, and I'm really working with them on challenging the stages of grief.
Yes,
challenging those, and who told us. And it doesn't mean that we haven't experienced those stages, but who told us? Where did that belief come from? And if you had it within you to shift that, would you shift that? What is that belief costing you?
Yeah.
And I'm having them, and the biggest thing that is costing them is, I was kind of surprised on some of them, was number one was guilt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, it's costing me my sanity. It's costing me sadness every single day.
Yeah.
It's costing me a separation from my other children that are still with me, or my relationship and connecting with my partner.
You know, this is a discussion that I think is so important, because in the 70s, I even took a class on death and dying. This is before I'd lost my beloveds. And it was taught with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's work. And she had another step called connecting to the departed. And the publishers of her first books said, no, you can't add that, because then it won't be a mainstream book. And so Elizabeth,
I never heard that before. That's amazing. Wow.
Elizabeth Kubler-Ross knew that, yes, part of the grief phase is you move through all these emotions, and then you learn to have a new relationship with your departed. And
that makes sense, because that's what I'm teaching. And it's because one of the biggest things that Kiva has taught me is our relationship has just gotten started.
Right.
We are not done. So when I'm talking to these mothers, I say, how about living in the possibility that as you're going through this process, as you're feeling all the emotions, as you're coming back to showing yourself compassion and loving on yourself, and coming up for air with the living component of that BGL, how about looking at now, I get to look with new eyes. Who told me this is the only way to see? I get to look with new eyes, and I get to develop an even greater relationship with my child. Now, here's the good news, Sue. What I'm hearing from people is, I never considered that. I never thought that. I was always told in the hereafter, I will reconnect. And I said, no, my dear, you don't have to wait until the hereafter. You don't need to have a title as a medium, a psychic, or an intuitive, or the boop, any of this stuff. We are all innately able, when we come to that place of knowing there's more, that there's only one, that there's only love, then the communication becomes easier. The connection becomes easier, because we're in the oneness, right? So guess what?
Yes. And this is why, you know, forgive me, people, but for years when I wrote Bridges to Heaven, I would say to clients, you don't have to go to a medium. You are a medium. And I ask for forgiveness for that, because I know many grieving parents who could not believe in anything beyond the physical until they did go to a medium, and that experience opened them up. So I understand now that, you know,
everyone has their place.
Yeah.
And everyone has their role, because everyone's on a different continuum.
But what we know to be true, Lavonne and I especially know, is that nobody here is more gifted about that than someone else. It's just that you may have been indoctrinated as a child in a certain religious belief. I grew up Catholic. The Catholics said that if you try to talk to your departed, you're going straight to hell, you know. and so many religions teach that and still teach it. And so really the only thing stopping any listener from being a medium is whatever negative limiting belief they have about that in their head.
And now here's the beauty of it all. Everyone has their place. And with a medium or a psychic or an intuitive or any of those labels that we've had to kind of put out there in order for people to have a point of reference is beautiful. But the most valid intuitive psychic medium will always say, you can do this too.
That's right.
So, and I love it because I've really surrounded myself with those beautiful folk. And I just choose to call myself the spiritual teacher because I'm really committed to, and I know that's part of my expression and purpose in life is to teach people how to fish.
Yeah, it's just
because
so,
they do have it innately within them.
I agree. And this is what I love so much about your work. I mean, Lavonne, you and I are so similar because, you know, I love mediums. Like some of my best friends are great mediums like Lisa Wilcoxon, and I love them, and they're doing a great, incredible,
beautiful work.
service,
And that is
work. Yes.
It's important.
But when people ask me if I'm a medium, I say no.
Yeah, I do too.
I say,
and I do hear the children, and I do see them, and I do
too.
them.
I do too.
Yeah.
But I don't work the way a traditional medium works. I work through numerology because that happens to be the thing that was handed to me weeks after Paul had died. And it was the way I first started accepting or learning that there was another way of viewing our soul agreements, our soul missions here. And numerology brought me to that, along with some meditation and using my intuition. And so, you know, it's been 40 years. I've taken other mediumship classes and they're awesome, but I'm just sticking with what works for me, you know?
Because everyone has their role to play on the planet, and yours is in numerology. And you happen to be fabulous at it, phenomenal at it.
And yours, Lavonne, is helping every mom realize there's healing and hope, and it's not hard.
No, it's not hard. Let me tell you what the hard part is. The hard part is, I'll speak for myself, not placing it on others. The hard part for me was my resistance. It's always a struggle and hard when I am resisting at some level. And the resistance is part of our nature. It's part of what it's like, you want me to learn something new? You want me to tap into something new? You want me to see the world with new eyes? Oh my gosh, how do I do that? I've been indoctrinated. My favorite word is, I've been decolonizing my mind. Our minds are colonized. You can use any kind of word you want to. I've got some precious words, but the clean word is the decolonizing my mind, all that indoctrination. And if it works for you, keep it. If it doesn't work for you, then it's time to, that's where we can assist you, or wherever you feel drawn to assist you, but always come back to the self. Your teaching must always come back to the self.
Right.
Every time.
And, in numerology, something I want to share with the listeners, you, beautiful Lavonne, are on the Aries 1 path, which any of my peeps know means she came here to be a visionary, to take her own unique path and lead us in that direction that would be against conventional thinking. It would be taking your own path and being proud of it, loud and true, and leading us boldly that way. And, it's also born in self-doubt, the 1 path. And I'm sure in your early years, you've probably overcome that or dealt with that. But I think your path, you are a perfect illustration of someone on that 1 path visionary journey, saying, I own it, I teach it, I share it. It came born of grief and pain, but I stand up for the spiritual wisdom that I know is true.
Okay, now here's the deal, folks. Y'all just heard what she said. That was like, I received, because I'm telling you, the self-doubt was much stronger years ago, not as strong now, but it still creeps in. This is what I want you to hear. It still creeps in. And what I hear my heart say is, you can choose to participate in the self-doubt, or you can choose to see it as the gift, and we can move forward. And I'm telling you, day in and day out, I am saying that to myself, and I am breathing in. And what I know to be true is that I am wisdom, and I am divinely guided. And I know why I'm here. Forget about the how, but I know why I'm here. Why am I here? Because it is time to shift the awareness that it has to be X, Y, and Z,
Yes.
and that you can choose what your X, Y, and Z can be, moment to moment to moment. And you can do it imperfectly.
I'm sorry.
And that's
I have to show you something. This little kitty is going insane right now. I think Kiva's spirit is here.
Yeah, I believe you. I totally believe you.
Because she's just jumping around. She usually sits curled up at my feet during a podcast. But Kiva is such a 33 powerful soul that it's almost like my cat Kirabo is playing with Kiva.
I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised. You know, Sue, we're just here to love on ourselves and love on one another. And it's time for, if people choose it, to free themselves. It's time to be free.
And I think what you said about self-doubt is so important for everyone listening, because people will come up and go, gosh, I know I'm intuitive, but I don't have the confidence to do that. And our answer is, nobody has the confidence to do it. We finally just decide, this is my soul's work, my soul's truth, and I have to show up as who I am and not care how people feel about it.
Yeah. Here's the other thing too, people see it as a challenge because it's something new, right? One of the biggest things that I'm hearing, even like now and in this space, is have fun with it. I know that there's days you're not having fun, you're grieving, you're going through it. When you're coming up for that air, have fun with it. Pick up that book that talks about intuition. Let your soul guide you to that book, or to that podcast, or to that whatever it is. Dive around in it, and you don't have to believe everything you read, see, hear. You can take that stuff, put it on the shelf, and take a little nugget. Just tell yourself, I'm going to read this page, and I'm going to take one nugget from this, and implement it today, and see how that goes. And the beauty is, your children are with you, your loved ones are with you, and guiding you, and wanting to have more of a relationship with you. And they are going to be sending you those beautiful, magnificent signs. And it's just about coming up for air long enough to be aware that those signs are right in front of you.
And I think that goes back to one thing you said earlier, when you said that one of the things that prevents us from owning our intuition is our resistance. Yeah. And I love that, because I talk about it in terms of surrender, that we all have to hit that moment where and grief will do this to us, where we're on our knees going, I don't know anything anymore. I don't have any answers. I surrender to the lesson in front of me. Please, God, divine guides, whatever word you use, help me, show me the lesson so I can move through it with grace and love.
Show me my peace point.
Yes.
Show me my peace point. Because, some people get triggered by the word lesson, and we're not in control of how people get triggered. But the good news is, if you get triggered by the word lesson, that is the lesson.
Oh, that's good. I like
the trigger,
that. But you're
the trigger is the way your divine spirit communicates to let you know, this is our focus, and this is what we're going to work with and work on. Yeah. And sometimes the gift of the trigger, right?
Yeah. And sometimes the surrender is simply to allow yourself to cry and feel.
Yes.
And so many people are so strong. And I even say back in my early days of grief, I was an outward bound mountaineering instructor, so I wasn't going to let grief knock me over. And yet I needed so badly to cry, just to be on my
Yeah.
knees and surrender to the lesson of loss. And it took me, I think it was probably 3 years after Paul died, and then Chrissy had died too. So by that point, there was no escaping it.
Yeah.
That I was really just crying and acknowledging how awful that pain was, and
Yeah.
it can take you 3 years, it can take you 30 years or one day, but at some point you got to cry and feel it to
Yeah.
heal it.
And you know what? BGLs, breathe, grieve, live. You will go in and you will rotate and you will repeat. And that honestly will serve your highest, all of them, especially that live part coming up for air, the smallest to the simplest action or movement or whatever it is that you feel drawn to do will literally assist you through this process 1 inch at a time, one step at a time. Now, you said something about you were talking about how it hit you and you being the strong person. I remember I was always the strong person, and this is kind of interesting. Ever since I was 6, my first experience of someone passing, transitioning in my life was my sister. And I found her. I was 6 years old, and she transitioned. And I remember for neglect, from abuse. So it was, we were being starved as children, and she literally passed from starvation. And I just remember looking at my sister lying on that bed, and she passed at the hospital. She was pronounced dead on the arrival. But I remember standing there looking at her, and I'm 6 years old, but something inside of me, my soul was like, this is not okay. This is not right. I felt like the adult soul came to the forefront and was experiencing what was going on. Now, fast forward to me being strong my entire life, and Kiva transitioning and passing, burying her. And 3 weeks later, I walk into my bedroom, it's pitch black, and I've been busy. I just kept myself busy, didn't want to think about it, didn't want to feel it, I didn't want to, even with everything I knew, I was avoiding. And I walked into the room, and literally I felt like someone kicked me from underneath my feet. Both feet went up and I landed on my back. And I tell people that was grief saying, hello,
Yes.
let's go. And I wailed on the floor, and I cried and I wailed. And I remember sitting myself up in the dark room, and I thought, what are other mothers doing? What are they doing? With all the information I know, this is excruciating pain. I feel like someone had punched a hole literally in my chest and ripped my heart out.
Yeah. Oh,
And in that moment, I decided I'm going to be there for others. I'm going to be there for the moms. And in the beginning, it was everybody. And then Spirit held me in after a couple of years and said, we need you to work literally the last 4 years, and said, we want you to work with the moms. I still work with others, if they have a brother or sibling or, a loved one or friend. But my main is the moms, and that's who I work with.
your story is so amazing for so many reasons, but even just knowing what you went through in your childhood of the devastating loss before you could even process what that meant, and the fact that you became so strong and moved forward in your life growing up from that, and then hit it again, that devastating loss, and this time knew right away that you were going to help others. That's so beautiful, Lavonne. That is such a journey of a spiritual teacher.
But you see how that happened? Knocked me flat on my back to get my attention, because I was resisting, and I was unwilling to process the emotion, and I was unwilling to take a look at what was there for me to see.
Yep.
And then I saw it.
That surrendered.
You don't have to go there. You don't have to go there, people. You don't have to go there. You can sit in your chair and say, show me.
Yes.
I don't need the 2x4. I don't need to be laid flat on my back. Show me.
But I just want to say, every person out there who's grieving, who's had the 2x4, I just say, it just means you're a powerful spirit, that you had to really get the wind knocked out of you before you'd say, all right, I'm open to what this is. Show me my next
Yeah.
step. And,
Yeah.
I know I'll resist a lesson until I'm completely exhausted and worn out. It's just my nature, and then I'll go,
Yeah, not me.
okay.
I can't. I can't. I'm like, I'm 55. If I haven't figured out the difference between X and Y and Z, and I'm not perfect in it, but I am conscious of it.
Yeah.
And so if I'm at choice
Yeah.
and I can choose, I'm going to choose to express, I'm going to choose to go to the peace point and look at what's going on
That's so
before
great.
it smacks me in the face.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. And here's the deal. There is this belief, this colonized belief, that it has to be hard to figure it out, that it has to be hard for you to learn.
Right.
That too, I'm working on debunking, because
Yeah.
that was put in us at a very young
That's
age.
true.
It has to be hard. Now, here's the deal. Have I done hard things? Yes. Have I done beautiful things? Yes. Have I learned from those experiences? Absolutely. But again, I'm 55 human years. And I do not have to experience it being hard. Doesn't mean hard things aren't going to still show up.
Right.
But I don't have to choose hard in order to walk through the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I will have times, I know, but I can still be conscious and aware of my personal choices that creates the pain from myself. Now, things out of my hands, I can't do anything about it, but I can definitely choose how I'm going to react to all of that.
Yeah.
But as far as my personal journey and steps.
Well, I think what I've learned in my journey here is that, just when we kind of think we have all the answers and we've got it going on or
Got
something,
nothing.
that's when the universe is going, okay, next lesson, I don't want to use the word lesson, next phase of your evolution here.
Yes.
And so we have to choose to step up to that next phase in whatever ways work for us personally,
And here's what the children tell me. They always say, when I'm in front of the moms and I'm teaching a class, or they're coming for the Saturday support, they always say, tell them to come up a little higher.
Oh,
Be
yeah.
willing to come up a little higher, out of their thinking, out of the norm, out of whatever is going on. It's like, come up a little higher and meet us. Come up a little higher, and we've got something to show you. But be willing to evolve, because we're not here just to simply exist. We are here to engage and to express and to grow and expand. And you know what? The more we're willing to grow and expand, we're not going to get it all while we're here in this lifetime. There's so much. But the more that we embrace and learn, when it is our time and our season of transition, so much of that's going to come and with us. That awareness, that consciousness will come with us. And when we see them, it's like, hey, instead of, hey, I got to work through a few things while I'm here.
Yeah.
And it's all good. I didn't quite get that when I was there. So let me look at that now. It's like, whoa, I did get that part, but I didn't get that part. And it's okay.
I know. I'm always thinking, when I cross over, I want my loved ones to say, well, you did pretty good. Yeah, you messed up a few things, but all in all, you learned how to step into love, and you overcame your fear and doubt, and you believed in the mystical divine, and pretty well done. Like, I'm hoping at least for a C, Well,
I don't think they'll say anything about messed up here or there, because all there is love, right? I think the wording would be, you nailed it.
Ah,
beautiful. You got it, sis. You got it, mom. You nailed it because you never gave up. You nailed it because you were willing to listen. You nailed it because you kept going no matter what was going on around you.
Even when the road turned directions and you were afraid, you kept following and taking a step forward wherever the light was. that's what we can do, is we can say, when I move this way, I know that's where the light lives, and I'm going to go in that direction, and that somehow will serve me. So on that note, Miss Aries One Visionary, what is next for you?
Oh my goodness, I am doing a master class. I'm working with moms connecting with their children. And I'm really excited about that. I'm doing a 3-month master class for moms to communicate and connect. And we are going to dive in for 12 weeks. And that's not on my website. You'd have to email me for that program.
So
That
tell
one's
them how
different.
to contact you.
You can contact me on lavonnewells.com, my website, or you can simply email me at thespiritualteacher@lavonnewells.com. It's kind of long and lengthy, but the email is on the website, so I guess that's a good way to do it. But I'm really committed to, moms really loving on themselves, trusting themselves enough, being confident enough. And that's part of what that 3-month program is, connecting with confidence and dropping what it's costing you to hold on to that grief or that upset or that sadness.
Story.
Yeah, the sadness. And so that's what I have going on right now. And I'm excited about that. And then every Saturday, jump on. That's a gift from me to you. Jump on Mountain Standard Time. My website has all that information. Once you register, it sends you the link right away. And we just gather on Saturday mornings from 9 to 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. So that's my love. And
All
that,
right.
I'm
So
sticking to it. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I just want to say that you are a blessing and a gift to the world, Lavonne. And I know that anybody grieving who's listening can know that you offer light and hope and healing for them. So be sure, everyone, to visit lavonnewells.com, and you'll see more videos, you'll see more teachings and class workshops. And Lavonne, I look forward to seeing you again someday in person at another conference, I hope. And it's such a joy to know you. And on that note, I'm Sue Frederick saying goodbye. And my website is suefrederick.com and lavonnewells.com. And we love you until we meet again.